Dude, LeBron James has been the best player in basketball since 2006, and he's still the best player on the best team in basketball in 2020. I mean, if that's not enough to say how elite LeBron James is, I don't know what will. But I'll just get into it. How you guys doing? It is July 20th, 2020 out here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I was going to do a profile, of course, a GOAT profile, not an elite profile, because LeBron is more than an elite basketball player. LeBron is the best basketball player, at least of my lifetime. I started watching basketball around 2006, 2007. I'm telling you, from when I started watching basketball up until now, and I'm 20 years old, I will be 21 in September. LeBron James has been the best player in basketball for as far as I can remember. Even in the years that Kobe Bryant was winning championships. LeBron James was the best individual basketball player because of what he did with Cleveland before he got to Miami. The way he was able to win with Miami, go back to Cleveland, winning Cleveland with all the odds stacked against him. And now he's going to try to see if he can make it work in LA, but now he's got coronavirus stopping him. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Nah, but I'm going to take you down the narrative, which leads to why many people believe LeBron James will go down as, if not the best, one of the best basketball players ever. And that debate can come down to whatever. I don't care at this point. But if for some reason you woke up on a different, you've been in a coma for 30 years and you're asking who LeBron James is. LeBron James is a 35-year-old small forward. He stands at about 6'9", 250 pounds. I mean, the best way to describe him, I guess, is if he was made in a lab. He has the perfect athleticism and the perfect build and the perfect stamina and the perfect coordination and the perfect agility to put together into one basketball player just to make it unfair for everyone else. Many people were aware of LeBron even before he even made it to the league. So LeBron's basically been on the national radar for almost 20 years now, since he was about a 15-year-old kid. He was on the first cover of Sports Illustrated because as a high school player, in his sophomore, junior, and senior year, he was named Ohio Mr. Basketball. He was named a two-time Parade All-American. He was not only named to the McDonald's All-American, he was named the MVP. He was a two-time Mr. Basketball USA. He was the high school basketball player of the year his junior and senior year in high school. I'm pretty sure only Kareem might have been the last player to get that. That's the one thing I don't know. He was the Naismith Prep Player of the Year. He had received all of the accolades you could expect him to receive in high school, and just imagining his build. He was also one of the top recruited football players, and Ohio State wanted him, but naturally that wouldn't happen. No, but LeBron James, already before he got to the NBA, he was already a legend in terms of just like legendary proportions. No players had sold out a high school game like LeBron James had. I mean, there was so much hype around him, and the fact that he even lived up to it, he exceeded the hype by now. There's no way he thought at that time he'd be this successful in the NBA, but he is. But yeah, but this is the persona. This is the man, the myth, the legend. This is how the world is perceiving LeBron already as a teenager before he steps foot into the league. And let me say, in a really, really, really good draft class, in a historic draft class, LeBron James, the high schooler, stood out, even among Vlade Divac from overseas, Carmelo Anthony, who just won the national championship as a freshman. That would be probably be the number one pick in literally almost any year. Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, they're doing their thing. But in the 2003 NBA draft, when the Cleveland Cavaliers won the NBA lottery and had the chance to take the first overall pick, they chose to take the St. Vincent St. Mary product from them. They chose to take the Cleveland kid. He was able to start his career with his hometown team, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and get his career started there in 2003 at 19 years old. So at 19 years old, LeBron James would start 79 games in a season where the Cleveland Cavaliers would finish with the 9th best record in the East. That season, LeBron James would average 40 minutes a game, averaging 21 points, 5.5 rebounds, 6 assists, 1.5 steals, over 6 steals, shooting 42% from the field, 29% from three, and he's shooting 75% from the free throw line. And during this season, LeBron James was, of course, named to the first team All-Rookie, but he was also named the Rookie of the Year over Carmelo Anthony, who had an equally as impressive resume. But LeBron was doing this as a teenager in the league. He was averaging 21, 5.5, and 6, which is pretty insane because a lot of these players make the jump from high school to college to the NBA. LeBron went from high school to the NBA and immediately averaged 21 points a game. I mean, the only person we've seen do it this early was probably Luka Doncic, but he was playing professionally when he was a teenager, so I mean, that's kind of different. And now, going into his age 20 season, LeBron James already being recognized as the best young player in his class, at least. He was recognized with the Rookie of the Year. He wasn't an all-star yet, but he was starting to be known as one of the league's best young players going into his age 20 season. In this season, he would earn his first All-Star as he would start 80 games in a season where the Cleveland Cavaliers finished ninth in the East yet again, where they would miss the playoffs. But LeBron James would earn his first All-Star game while leading the league in minutes at 42.4 minutes per game. He would finish the season averaging 27 points, 7.4 rebounds, 7.2 assists, 2.2 steals, shooting 47% from the field, 35% from three, and 75% from the free throw line. At 20 years old, and he turned 21 in New Year's Eve. But, I mean, what else is there to say? LeBron James at this point was averaging 27, 7, and 7 at 20 years old in the NBA is something that has not been done before. Even though they did make the playoffs, LeBron James would then go on to make the All-NBA second team for the very first time in his career. He was recognized as a top 10 player within his first 2 years in the league after being the number one draft pick out of high school. And at that point, he was already living up to his billing as the next one up. Year 2, he was already an all-star, averaging 27 and 7. Like I said, that year ended there, but he would go a little bit further and further with each year. In 2005-2006, LeBron James would start all 79 games that he played in a season where the Cleveland Cavaliers ended with the fourth best record in the NBA East with 50 wins. That season, in his age 21 season, he would earn his second All-Star bid after averaging 31.4 points, 7 rebounds, 6.6 assists, 1.6 steals, while shooting 48% from the field, 33.5% from the three-point line, and he also shot 74% from the three-point line. 2005-2006 would be the very first season that LeBron was named to the NBA first team. He was the All-Star Game MVP as well, and he had led his team to the NBA playoffs where they would go on to beat the Washington Wizards with Gilbert Arenas in the very first round. And they would lose to the Pistons in the second round, who in 2005-2006 were still an incredibly powerful team in the East that LeBron would eventually have to get through the very next year. But at this point, LeBron James was already a first-team All-NBA player, and he was starting to be recognized as a top 5 player in the NBA already in his third season. That was his age 21 season. Now, going into his 2006-2007 season, his age 22 season, LeBron James, coming off of all that, he would go on to start all 78 games in a season where the Cleveland Cavaliers finished with the second best record in the East with 50 wins, just like last season, but they finished with the second seed. LeBron James would earn his third All-Star bid while averaging 27.3 points, 6.7 rebounds, 6 assists on the season, shooting 48% from the field, 32% from three, and he shoots 70% from the free throw line. And actually, 2007, he would fall back to the NBA second team, but that was the third time he had reached an All-NBA team. That was the last time LeBron was on the All-NBA second team. That was 2007. It's 2020. In 2007, LeBron was, for the second and final time, he was named to the All-NBA team as he was named to his third All-Star game. While doing all this and helping the Cavaliers get to the best seed that they've had in a very, very long time as a franchise. They haven't been the 2 seed since 1976. That year, they would go on to sweep the Wizards in the first round. They would beat a very strong New Jersey Nets team in 6. They would go on to beat the very same Pistons that beat them the previous year. And in this series, LeBron James would have the game where he would score 25 straight points and 30 of Cleveland's last 31 points to beat the Pistons and end out the series. And at that point, that's when I believe LeBron James took the crown as the most dominant individual basketball player. With that, you can always dispute. But for me, when 21-year-old LeBron beat the Pistons single-handedly after all the teams that the Pistons beat in the playoffs, I think that's when he officially became the best. Everyone else can dispute. But following that, they would go on to get swept by the San Antonio Spurs in 4 games. And many people are aware of the team that LeBron had, so I'm not going to really get into that. But at this point, right before his age 23 season, LeBron James, in his first 4 years in the league, had proven all the doubters wrong. He had made it to the NBA. He had been a 3-time All-Star. He had been named to the All-NBA team twice, the second team twice, and the first team once. And he had gone to average 20 points in every single season that he's played, and he's been able to do so shooting at a very efficient clip. And he had finally gotten the Cavaliers to being the second best team in the East after not being in the playoffs for, the years before they got him. They were in the situation to get him in the first place. He got them to the playoffs. And that goes into his 2007-2008 season for Cleveland, where he would start 74 out of 75 games for Cleveland as they finished up with the 4th best record in the East. This year, LeBron would average 40 minutes a game for the 4th season in a row. He would go on to lead the league in scoring for the only time in his career. He would go on and the only time he would average 30 points, or the second time he'd average 30 points a game in his career, he averaged 30 points a game. He averaged 7.9 rebounds, 7.2 assists, 1.8 steals, and 1.1 blocks. Shooting 48% from the field, the best he shot up until that point, 31% from the 3. He shot 71% from the free throw line. And in 2008, he would go on to earn his 4th All-Star bid. He would go on to be named the All-Star Game MVP for the second time in his career. He'd be named to the All-NBA first team for the second time in his career. And LeBron, once again, was recognized as a top 5 player in the NBA despite being on Cleveland. But this time, and he was already a finals contender and single-handedly by himself. This was also the year that the Celtics were able to assemble the Big Three the first time. A team could really do that in a bit, where they got Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, and Kevin Garnett on the same team. But in the first round, LeBron beats the Wizards for the 3rd year in a row in the first round. Rip to the Wizards. And then they would go on to lose to the Celtics in the second round in 7 games. But LeBron was still slowly and surely becoming one of the league's best young players. But the one thing he was missing was the MVP, and he was slowly creeping up to that. And now leading into LeBron's age 24 season in 2008-2009, LeBron would start 81 games for the Cleveland Cavaliers in a season where they would finish with the best record in the East. The first time the Cleveland Cavaliers have ever been in the first seed in the East. The first time that has ever happened in the history of ever was when LeBron James was leading the show. Of course, this year, LeBron James would go on to he would win his first MVP in 2009. He would be recognized as the league's best player for the very, very first time. He would be named to his 3rd All-NBA first team. He would additionally be named to his 5th consecutive All-Star game. That season, he would go on to average 28.4 points, 7.6 rebounds, 7.2 assists, 1.7 steals, 1.1 blocks. 49% from the field. He shot 34.4% from the 3 line. He shot 78% from the free throw line. And like I said, the Cavaliers would run to be the number 1 seed, and LeBron would win the MVP. Naturally, that season, they would go on to sweep the Pistons in the very, very first round. At the end, when that dynasty really came to an end, they beat the Hawks in the semifinals. They swept them 4-0, and they went on to lose to the Orlando Magic in the Eastern Conference Finals in the year where the Magic went to the finals and lost to the Lakers. That was the year where people thought LeBron and Kobe would eventually meet in the finals and play, but at the end, the Orlando Magic were a better coach team and a deeper team, top to bottom. But it's really impressive how LeBron James was able to get that team there. That's the most wins that Cleveland's ever had in a regular season, and that would go down as LeBron James' first ever MVP. But the Cavaliers would lose. They would lose in the Eastern Conference Finals, and they wouldn't get back until LeBron returned the second time. That would lead into his 2009-2010 season, which up until that point, he's already a 5-time All-Star and an MVP. But he needed a championship, and so far it wasn't working in Cleveland. In 2009-2010, in LeBron James' final season in Cleveland, in his age 25 season, he would start 76 games in a season where the Cleveland Cavaliers finished with the best record in the East for the second year in a row with 61 total wins. LeBron James that season would go on to average 29.7 points. He has not averaged that many points since that year. He would go on to average 7.3 rebounds, 8.6 assists, the most assists he's ever averaged in his career up until that point. He would shoot 50% from the field, 33% from three, and 77% from the free throw line. And in 2009-2010, LeBron would win his second consecutive MVP. He would be named to his fourth All-NBA first team, and he would be named to his sixth career All-Star game, all, of course, within his first 7 years in the NBA. He had won back-to-back MVPs. He had gotten his team to the playoffs with the number 1 seed in back-to-back years, but sadly they would beat the Bulls in 5 games in the first round, and then they would lose to the Celtics in the second round in 6, because at the end of the day, the Celtics were a better-built team with better core players, and at that point, that was LeBron's last season in Cleveland. At that point, he had done everything up until that point except for win a championship. He would go into Miami. That would be his age 26 year. But through age 25, he's already made himself one of the best. He's already cemented himself as one of the best players the league has ever seen. And at that point, that's when he's already elite. And I would say he's already GOATed just for winning back-to-back MVPs in the NBA. Even that in itself is elite. But that was the year he would decide to go and join the Miami Heat in 2010, 2011, and play with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, 2 other players that were in his draft class that were definitely looking to be the new Eastern Conference powerhouse to knock out the Celtics. In 2010, 2011, LeBron James decided to take his talents to South Beach, and in his very first year, he would play 79 games as the Miami Heat hit the second seed in the East for the first time since Shaq was there in 2005-2006 when they won the title last. And so in that season, LeBron James would go on to average 26.7 points a game. He averaged 7.5 rebounds, 7 assists, 1.6 steals. He went on to shoot 51% from the field, 33% from three, and 76% from the free throw line on a completely new team. He would go on to make the NBA first team yet again, and that would be the 5th in his career. He would be the NBA MVP runner-up that season, and additionally, he was named to the All-Defensive First Team for the 3rd year in a row at that time. So I mean, at that point, he had helped the Heat get into the second best seed in the East, but the NBA decided they'd give it to Derrick Rose because the Chicago Bulls had a better record that year. So, I mean, it's whatever. Derrick Rose won the MVP that year. The Heat would go to the playoffs. They would beat the Sixers in the first round in 5. They'd beat the Celtics with, the team that beat LeBron the year before in 5. They beat the Bulls in 5. In the Eastern Conference Finals, LeBron James locked Derrick Rose down. And then they would lose in the NBA Finals to the Dallas Mavericks 4-2 in a series that many people will blame on LeBron. Yeah, I guess. I mean, at that point, LeBron is the number 1 player on that team, and he should have done more. And a lot of that falls on him. But LeBron James, at that point, would learn not to make that mistake again, especially in the finals at that point, and especially at that point in the playoffs. Moving on to 2011-2012, LeBron James would once again be another All-Star for the 8th year in a row as he started 62 games for the Miami Heat in a season where they once again finished 2nd in the East. That season, he would go and finish out averaging 27.1 points. He would average 7.9 rebounds, 6.2 assists, 1.9 steals per game, all while shooting 53% from the field, 36% from the three-point line, 77% from the free throw line. And, of course, in 2011, 2012, LeBron would win his third MVP in 4 years. And additionally, he would be named to the first team for the sixth time, fifth year in a row. And additionally, he was named to the all-defensive first team for the fourth time in a row. Additionally, LeBron was a top 5 player on the defensive side of the ball for the fourth year in a row, and he was named the MVP for 3 times in 4 years. At that point, I think he's already an all-time great once you're in that category, but at that point, he hadn't won yet. That year, he gets to the NBA Finals. He beats the Knicks in the first round in 5. He then goes on to beat the Pacers in 6 in the semis. They beat the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals in 7 after they were originally down 5-2. LeBron pulls out one of the greatest Game 6s ever, and then they go and beat the Thunder when the Thunder had KD, Russ, and James Harden the last year that those 3 were all together. LeBron would win the MVP in the Finals, MVP in the exact same season. And at this point, LeBron was at the height of his powers, but somehow, up until this point, he still hadn't played his best season yet. And then, even before his best season, he was up through his age 27 season. He'd already been an 8-time All-Star. He had been a champion with the Miami Heat. He had been a 3-time MVP. He had been named to the first team All-Pro 6 times by then, and he'd been named to the second team twice. I mean, at that point, he was just starting to win championships, and he was already an all-time great, but once he started winning championships, that's when he inserts himself into the greatest player, into the conversation among the greatest players that have played the sport of basketball. So in 2012, 2013, in LeBron's best, most efficient season ever, where the season where he was 1 vote off of being the first unanimous MVP vote getter. He finished the season, he started 76 games in a season where the Miami Heat finished with the best record in the East with 66 games, the most wins they will ever have in a season as a franchise, at least up to date. LeBron would go and average 26.8 points. He'd average 8 rebounds, 7.3 assists, 1.7 steals, 0.9 blocks. He'd shoot 56.5% from the field, 40.6% from 3. He shoots 75.3% from the free throw line. LeBron that year would go on to earn his 5th consecutive, and that would be his final, first-team All-Defensive nomination, and he was named to the All-Pro team for the 7th time in his 10-year career at that point. He had been recognized as a top 5 player in the NBA 7 of those 10 years, and then 3 of the last 4, he was voted on as the best or the most valuable at that point. That year, at that point, LeBron was already a championship, and the Heat they had secured the top seed in the East for the first time ever. I think the only time since 2004, 2005. But they would go on to sweep the Bucks in the first round 4-0. They would go on to beat the Bulls in 5. They would beat the Bulls in the Western Conference semis. They would go on to beat the Pacers in 7 in the conference finals in a series that wasn't as close as 4-3 makes it out to be. But they would go and beat the Spurs in a very, very close series in which Ray Allen, of course, hit the biggest shot of all time. But of course, LeBron got them there. He got them to the point where he had to make the shot in the first place. But everyone deserves their credit on that team because that was a well-earned championship, and that would be LeBron James' 2nd championship. He would be an MVP and Finals MVP in 2 consecutive seasons. At that point, he was the best player in all of basketball. It was definitely undisputed, and he was 1 vote away from being the first unanimous MVP because someone gave it to Carmelo Anthony. I'm still trying to figure that one out, but it is what it is. The votes are already cast. And at that point, LeBron was at the top of the world. His legacy was already cemented as one of the greatest players ever, but he just kept climbing. Continuing on to his 2013-2014 season, this would be his 10th All-Star season as he would start 77 games in a season where the Miami Heat would finish 2nd in the East. And LeBron James in 2013-14 would go on to make the NBA first team for the 8th time in his career at this point, and it would be the 7th time in a row. From 2007, 2008 up until that point. And, of course, with that, he was named to the all-defensive second team. That was the last time LeBron James would make an all-defensive team in his last year in Miami. In that season, he would go on to average 27.1 points per game, 6.9 rebounds, 6.3 assists, 1.6 steals on the season, shooting 56% from the field, 38% from three, and he would go on to shoot 75% from the free throw line. In a season where the Miami Heat would get to the finals yet again. They would sweep the Bobcats, beat the Nets in 5. They beat the Pacers in 6. And they lost to the Spurs in 5 in Kawhi Leonard's first MVP, the season where Kawhi Leonard won MVP for the San Antonio Spurs. At that point, LeBron James had learned what it took to be a champion, and he decided he wanted to come home. And by the end of that, he wanted to spend his age 30 year in Cleveland. So before we even get to his stint in Cleveland, right? At that point, within his 4 years in Miami, LeBron James, after his 4 years in Miami, LeBron James was a 10-time All-Star. Eight of the 10 times he was an All-Star. He was a top 5 player in the NBA. He was named to the All-NBA first team. And in his third year, he was an All-Star. He was a top 10 player in the NBA. He was the MVP 4 times in a 5-year window. And he would go on and be the first almost unanimous MVP in one of those runs, while helping the Heat win 2 championships in that stretch. And that year, like I said, in 2014-15, he would go back to Cleveland as he decided. He wanted to go back to Cleveland to play at home and bring a championship to Cleveland. So in 2014-15, in his first year, he would go on and start 69 games in a season where the Cleveland Cavaliers would finish second in the East. LeBron James was once again named to the NBA All-Star team. He was named to the All-NBA first team for the 9th time in his career at this point, the 8th in a row. He would go on to average 25.3 points, 6 rebounds, 7.4 assists, 1.6 steals, shooting 49% from the field, 35% from three, 71% from the free throw line. And in addition to being an all-star for the 11th year in a row, LeBron James led the Cavaliers to the NBA Finals by beating the Celtics in the first round. They swept him. They beat the Bulls in 6. They beat the first seed Hawks. They swept him. And they ended up losing to the Warriors in the finals because back in the first round, Kevin Love got his arm ripped out of his socket by Kelly Olynyk against the Celtics. And then Kyrie Irving would hurt his ankle in the finals. But then LeBron James had to battle against Stephen Curry, who was the freshly minted MVP, and the Warriors ended up winning that championship. And the Cavaliers would not win. They would not be the victor in this. That would go to LeBron James' 2015-16 season, which would probably go down to be one of his most epic ever in his career. His age 31 season, in which I'm telling you he might have had the best playoff run of all time. But still, in LeBron James' age 31 season, his second year there, he would go on to start 76 games in a season where the Cleveland Cavaliers finished first in the NBA East. Then he would go on to average 25 points a game, averaging 36 minutes a game. He would average 7.4 rebounds, 6.8 assists, 1.4 steals, shooting 52% from the field, 31% from three, 73% from the free throw line. And he would make the NBA first team for the 9th time in a row, and while being an all-star in his 12th consecutive season. This season, like I said, he would get them to the playoffs with the number 1 seed. They would go on to sweep the Pistons in the first round. They swept the Hawks in the second round. They beat the Toronto Raptors in 6 in the conference finals, and they went on to beat a 73-9 Warrior team. I'm not going to get much into detail with this, but they were trailing 3-1 after 4 games. LeBron James did lead everyone in the series in points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks in that series to earn his 3rd championship and his 3rd Finals MVP. And at that point, that's when I believe he became the greatest basketball player of all time, because I always saw it as a team sport, because one player can't do everything for the team. And I know he had Kyrie there and he had his teammates, but considering how outmatched they were against the Warriors, I think the one player who I think could probably do the best against a 5-man team would probably be LeBron James. But I mean, he'd still lose because it's a 5-man team, but he'd do the best against them. But at that point, that's when I believe he became the best. And at that point, he was just adding to his legacy. Because in 2016-17, that offseason, Kevin Durant would join the Warriors, which would make life a lot harder for LeBron James when it got to the finals. But the Cavaliers were starting to grow into a very strong team in the East. The very next year, Kyrie came back for his last season. And in 2016-17, in LeBron's age 32 season, he would start 74 games, where the Cavaliers finished second in the East with a 51-win record. In 2016-17, LeBron James would go on to make his 11th All-NBA first team. At that point, he was he was just counting accomplishments at this point. He would go on to, at that point he was a top 5 player in the league, and he would go on to make his 13th consecutive All-Star game, all while averaging 26.4 points, 8.6 rebounds, 8.7 assists, all while averaging 1.2 steal. 8.7 assists, the most assists he's ever averaged in a season up until that point. He was shooting 55% from the field, 36% from three, and 67% from the line. But still, he was able to get the Cleveland Cavaliers to all the way to the NBA Finals, sweeping the Pacers, the Raptors, and then losing one game to the Celtics before eventually getting to the Warriors and getting knocked out in 5. But they were still able to get a win. They were the only team to get a win on the Warriors, and LeBron James played an amazing series that year. And this would lead into his 2017-18 season, where in his last season in Cleveland, that was right after Kyrie Irving had left to go to Boston to be the man on his own team. And in that 2017-18 season, in LeBron's age 33 season, he would go on to start all 82 games of the season, where the Cleveland Cavaliers finished with the 4th best record in the East, but he was still Kevin Love was still there, but he was no longer an all-star. He would go on to lead the league in minutes for the 3rd time in his career. That's the 2nd year in a row. In addition, he would lead the league in games played. He played all 82 games this year. That was the first time he had ever done so in his career, the only time he had ever done so. He went on to average 27.5 points, 8.6 rebounds, 9.1 assists, the most assists he's ever put up in a season to date. He would go on to average 1.4 steals, 0.9 blocks. He went on to average 54. He went on to shoot 54% from the field, shoot 37% from three, and he shot 73% from the line. In 2017-18, LeBron would be named to his 12th and final or most recent All-NBA first team. He would be named the NBA All-Star Game MVP in his 14th consecutive All-Star game. Both teams have 12. He's been a top 24 player in the league for 14 consecutive seasons. Didn't miss any single one. Didn't miss one of them due to injury. Nothing. For 14 straight seasons, he was named an All-Star, and arguably could have been named one his rookie year. But 14 of his first 15 seasons, he was an All-Star. I can't say that anymore. He would lead the 4th place Cavs into the playoffs, so they would beat the Pacers in the first round in 7. They would go on to sweep the Raptors 4-0 after LeBron James's amazing off the backboard switch, not to mention what he did against the Pacers. And he went on to beat the Celtics in 7, and then they went to lose to KD and the Warriors in 4, especially after in Game 1 where he had 51 points, 9 rebounds, and 9 assists, and then J.R. Smith got George Hill's missed free throw and then ran the clock out when they needed a bucket. That was a whole thing. But LeBron James, that's still part of LeBron James's legacy, and that goes down as another loss. Even though he was able to get his team all the way to the NBA Finals, they were able to lose. He faced the better team when he got to the finals most of the times. And 4 of those times, it was against the Warriors. And one of those times, he was able to pull one out. This would lead into another summer of people speculating where LeBron would go. Many people were kind of aware that he would go to Los Angeles, but he met with Magic Johnson, and then while Magic Johnson was still the GM of the Lakers, he was able to get LeBron to come. And in his first year, LeBron didn't have a lot of help. He was working with young Brandon Ingram, young Lonzo, the Laker players that then went to the Pelicans. In that season, LeBron James would start 55 games in a season where the Los Angeles Lakers would finish the season 10th in the West. That season, LeBron James would average 27.4 points, 8.5 rebounds, 8.3 assists, 1.3 steals, all while shooting 51% from the field, 34% from three. He would shoot 66% from the line. And even in this season, LeBron James, in his new setting, he would go on to be named to the All-NBA third team for the only time in his career, by the way. This is his 34. This is age 34 season. This is his 15th consecutive All-Star game. In his 16th season, that was when he was named to the All-NBA third team. Just the one time, it was the 1 year he went to LA and played 55 games because he was hurt most of the way through. And at that point, the Lakers were more than likely about to. They definitely had the playoffs in hand up until LeBron James got hurt, but he was still able to cement himself as at least a top 15 player, and he made an All-NBA team, and he was able to keep his All-NBA streak intact. And this would lead into the most recent season in 2019-2020. In LeBron James's age 35 career, LeBron James said, "You know what? I'm going to be the starting point guard of the Los Angeles Lakers." And they were able to acquire Anthony Davis with a couple trades. They were able to kind of build that team up after that 1 year that LeBron was there, and they did make the playoffs. And people were like, LeBron, when? LeBron James will go on. He would average 34.9 minutes a game. He would start 60 games in a season where the Lakers ended up with a 49-14 record. Right now, they are winning the West. Right now, before the bubble continues, they have a 5.5 game lead over the Los Angeles Clippers. But as of right now, with this season going on, LeBron James would be named to his 16th consecutive All-Star game. His All-Star game career can drive a car at this point. He's averaging 26 points, 25.7 points per game. He's averaging 7.9 rebounds, 10.6 assists, 1.2 steals, 0.5 blocks, 4 turnovers a game. He's shooting 50% from the field, 34.9% from the three-point line. He would shoot 69.7% from the free throw line. And LeBron James I assume he's going to make the first team All-NBA for the 13th time in his career and set the record, because I believe he's holding the record for 12 first team All-NBA appearances with someone else. But the reality of the situation here is LeBron James is 35, a year that most basketball players break down or retire and decide to hang up the shoes, or even if they were the top player in the world, they're at least one of them. LeBron James is still the most impactful player in the world at 35 years old, and I don't think there's any way he's slowing down anytime soon. The only way he slows down is if, I don't know. He has to retire on his own terms, or he's going to retire 10, 15 years from now. Because I still think he'll be NBA ready. He'll be an NBA level player within the next 10 years. That's how good he is. That's how much I believe and trust in this man's ability to take care of his body. Additionally, I left out what he's been able to do off the court with the I Promise schools. I even forgot to mention what he did with international basketball, where he won the Olympics. He won the Olympic game basketball tournament in 2008 in Beijing, in 2012 in London. He was on the team that won the bronze in Athens. I mean, there's so much to this man's career that many people are missing. Another thing I didn't mention, LeBron James passed Kobe Bryant recently for the third most points in NBA history. LeBron James is about to finish. He's already in the top 10 all-time in assists. And looking at his career stats right now, currently LeBron James is most definitely on pace to come within 40,000 points. He currently has 34,000 points, which he can clear 40 at the pace that he's scoring within at least 3 or 4 years. And at this pace, I know he'll play that long. Right now, he's sitting on 9,353 rebounds. He's 700 rebounds. He's been able to hit that, and he hit that in his last season in Cleveland, so he should be able to hit that very soon. He has 9,298 assists. I imagine within the next 2 seasons, he should be able to hit 10,000 on that. He has 2,000 steals. He's 50 blocks away from 1,000 blocks for his career, which is he can probably reach in about 2 good seasons. But I'm saying when it's all said and done, when LeBron's not even done yet, when LeBron is still an all-star, still making probably the first team All-NBA, he'll be one of the few players when it's all said and done with 40,000 points, 10,000 rebounds, 10,000 assists, 2,000 steals, 1,000 blocks. Very few players that can say that in NBA. He's the only player that can say that in NBA history. Well, he will be, but he has to reach that level first, and I imagine with the years to come, I'll definitely have more to say about LeBron. I want to thank you for listening to all 40 minutes of this. I really appreciate this. If you really have time, check out my boy. Right now, he's wearing number 23 for the Los Angeles Lakers. I imagine he's going to give that number to AD next year, and he's probably going to change it to 6 or something. But next time you watch LeBron, ask yourself, I mean, how many games will he be how many more games does he have left while he's playing at this condition? My idea, I think he's going to play a lot more games while he's one of the best players, if not the best player in basketball. With that said, man, I said my piece. I said my piece for 40 minutes. LeBron James is more than elite. LeBron is one of the greatest basketball players ever, and to me, he's the best basketball player that I've ever seen. And to me, there's no competition because I haven't seen anything else. But without further ado, I said my piece. Thanks for hearing me out. Peace out.